Today on Context, who is working to break the chains of victims of human trafficking? We'll hear their stories and examine the roots of modern-day slavery. I'm Lorna Duick, and you're watching Context, the show that looks at life beyond the headlines. It's modern-day slavery, and it's happening here in Canada and abroad. Human trafficking, the fastest-growing organized crime in the world, with over 20 million victims forced to sell their bodies for labor or sex. It's big business and tragic, with men, women, children, and the poor becoming products in the hands of violent and powerful people. Where does the demand come from? And why are religious communities at the forefront fighting human trafficking? Let's put it in context. Member of Parliament Joy Smith is one of Canada's leading anti-trafficking activists. She sponsored the bill that made child trafficking illegal in Canada, and now she's authored new legislation to allow law enforcement to apprehend and prosecute Canadians who commit human trafficking offenses overseas. She joins us now from Winnipeg. Minister Joy Smith, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
You know, for viewers who may be new to this issue that you are so immersed in, tell us what human trafficking looks like in Canada.
It's the buying and selling, particularly of young girls, and forcing them into the sex trade. Often perpetrators target very attractive young girls. They can be girls in the neighborhood, they can be girls on the street, they can be girls from Aboriginal communities. And what their purpose is to sell them and make money off them. It's the second most lucrative industry, if you want to put it that way, or crime in Canada, second only to the drug trade.
And who do the girls think they're meeting when they meet a person who turns out to be actually their trafficker?
Well, a perpetrator can come on board as a boyfriend, someone who's very attracted to the girl, and he gets their trust, and she believes he's their boyfriend. And what their purpose really is to sell her to somebody else or to traffic her themselves. And so it's a gigantic coercion, manipulation of young girls and young boys, but mostly young girls.
And now your new legislation is targeted at Canadians who would be perpetrating the crime of selling people overseas. Tell us what happens now when a Canadian attempts to traffic in human life when they're not in our own country.
When they're not in our own country, nothing happens. They can't be tried in our country. An example of this is Mr. Renshall. Mr. Renshall went to Thailand. He set up a boys' brothel. His youngest victim was 4 years of age. Mr. Renshall, had he come back to Canada, we could not have apprehended him. We could not have tried him. But fortunately, he went through another country that was under the jurisdiction of the United States. The United States authorities, the U.S. authorities picked him up, and he's now spending 25 years in jail. His brothel has been disbanded, the children have been rescued, and he's paying a price for that. But right now, that would not have happened, so that's why I put Bill C-310 together. It reaches the long arm of the Canadian law into other countries when Canadian citizens or permanent residents of our country set up shop in other countries to traffic young girls and boys into the sex trade or for forced labor.
And you've also put in Bill 310 a definition, really, of what all the exploitations would look like. Why was that necessary?
That was necessary, Lorna, because the courts needed more tools. In the other bills that we have in Canada, the perpetrators would go to court and the lawyers would have to prove that the victim was afraid right off the bat. Well, initially, the victim is not afraid. The victim feels that they're with friends. They feel that they're with a boyfriend. They feel that they're safe. It's not until they're cut off from their communities, their identification is taken away, they're shot up with drugs and rape, they become terrified then. But by then they're separated from everything. It's too late. So when they get into a court of law, that's the problem that we had. So I enhanced the definition of human trafficking and gave the court some more tools and described the different things they needed to look for. And these tools will help a great deal to try and convict these people who are buying and selling young girls and boys.
Joy Smith, thank you for this new bill on human trafficking. Thank you very much.
And thank you for having me on your show, Lorna.
Okay, one of the responses to human trafficking, Deborah Poor, you work with Young Street Mission, where you actually have a program to help pimps get out of the pimping business, selling, trafficking in women and boys. What are you learning about what's at the root of a pimp's problem in selling people?
Well, we're learning a lot, and we're learning it through relationships with them. One of the things that we've learned is that a lot of them have come from poverty themselves, growing up in high-risk neighborhoods, and a lot of them haven't had very many positive male role models in their lives. A lot of them, their dads or uncles or older brothers were involved in gang life or drug dealing or pimping themselves.
So what do you do when a pimp shows up and says, I want help?
I mean, for them, a big thing is finances. They made a lot of money and were really good at doing some really bad things. And a lot of them are dads and feel like they have kids to support. And a lot of them haven't finished high school. Some of them don't even have grade 8 education.
Are you involved in like a gradual withdrawal? I can see why I couldn't do that job. Like I would just like, you gradually withdraw them from it.
Yeah, well, you talk about their goals and how you can help them, gradually withdraw, how you can help minimize some of the risks and some of their attitudes towards women, and some of the violence there, and get them to places where they're starting to go, okay, I don't want to be involved in this. I don't, and challenge some of those attitudes, but also get them thinking about some of their goals. They didn't grow up necessarily wanting to be pimps, but they had a lack of opportunity. They grew up in gang-infested neighborhoods without a lot of support or positive role models. Some of them, at very young ages, felt like they had to support their family in some way, and it was either through. It usually started out through dealing drugs, and later found out that, hey, I can make a whole lot more money with a whole lot less risk of going to jail myself if I sell women instead of drugs.
All right, well, let's keep our eye on who the real victim is. And wow,